All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a little different and I think really fascinating. We're
Hmm.
plunging into this rich collection of ideas. They're pulled directly from excerpts of the book 12 Rules for Life,
Hmm.
An Antidote to Chaos.
Okay.
And we also have some really striking images that you, our listener, actually shared with us.
Great. So listener input too.
Exactly. And our mission here is, well, to go through this stuff together, pull out those core insights, those key
See
nuggets.
how it all fits together.
Yeah, see how they weave together perspectives from like psychology, philosophy, evolution, even ancient myth.
That's quite a mix.
It is to give us maybe a framework for navigating, well, the complexities of life. It's a real journey from how we stand, literally, to big cultural critiques and these patterns in old
What
stories.
struck me immediately about this material is how it tries to ground these life principles in such a huge range of fields. It's not just like giving advice.
Right.
It's trying to explain why certain approaches might work. Not just now, but because they seem tied to, fundamental parts of our biology and our shared human story.
And it feels like the whole thing kicks off with this really central idea, doesn't it? This constant tension.
Between order and chaos.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fundamental to the whole argument.
Okay, so let's unpack that. What's order, according to the source?
So order is defined as the territory we know, what's explored, predictable, tradition, security.
Like home, reliable relationships, your daily routine.
Exactly. Filing taxes, the trains running on time,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. The feeling before something totally unexpected happens, like the source uses the pre-9/11 world as an example, that's order.
Okay, so the safe, known space. Predictable. But the material also warns about it, right? Order isn't always purely good.
No, definitely not. It can become excessive. Too much demand for predictability, for uniformity,
Uh-huh.
and order slides into tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
Stultification. It gets so rigid that nothing new can emerge, nothing can grow.
Okay, so that's the danger on one side. And the flip side is chaos.
Chaos. That's the unknown, the formless potential. It's where you find, well, dreadful freedom, but also confusion.
So like a betrayal, losing your job, something completely out of the blue.
Exactly. The source mentions being audited or the post-9/11 world again, where everything just feels uncertain. Well, it can be terrifying.
But is there possibility in that fear? Is it just bad?
No, and that's key. The source notes that within chaos, there's also the potential for new, maybe benevolent order to emerge.
Ah.
As the raw material, new structures can be built from it.
Okay, so life is this constant push and pull. Known versus unknown, predictable versus unpredictable. Where does meaning fit into all this? Because it seems like the source is saying meaning isn't just being safe in order or lost in chaos.
Precisely. That's a crucial insight here. Meaning is found right on that dividing line between the two.
On the line.
Yeah, where you have enough stability to function, enough order.
Yeah.
But you're also actively exploring, transforming, adapting, cooperating with the unknown.
So standing on the boundary, not hiding in the known, but not dissolving into the unknown either.
That's the idea. Stable, yet exploring.
That really clicks when I look at those images you sent in, that compass-like symbol. It feels like finding direction right there in the middle of these big swirling forces. And seeing figures like, say, Michelangelo's David Peak Order, maybe, or an ideal form, contrasted with the Pieta, which capture such immense suffering and tragedy that feels like the raw chaos of existence.
That's a really insightful connection. And the smaller figures watching these huge concepts.
Yeah, it feels like us, like humanity, grappling with exactly this tension, order, suffering, ideals.
It fits very well. And the book's title itself, right? An Antidote to Chaos.
Yeah.
It directly says we need something against chaos. We need ordering principles, rules, standards, values.
We need something to hold on to when facing the unknown.
Yes, which brings us right to the next big point. Why having a value system is so critical.
According to this material, anyway.
Right, according to the source, it makes a strong case that shared belief systems value hierarchies. They aren't just like cultural nice-to-haves. They're essential for existence.
Why essential? How so?
Well, they stabilize how we interact.
Yeah.
They make people mutually predictable. And that's what allows for complex cooperation, even peaceful competition.
And without that shared system of value, what happens then?
The source argues pretty strongly that without a valued goal, people can't really act effectively or even perceive things properly.
I perceive.
Because action and perception are directed. They need an aim. If you don't have a system to judge what's worth aiming at, you're kind of paralyzed, lost.
Okay. And that feeling of moving towards something you value, making progress, that's where positive emotion comes from? Is that the idea?
That's the argument laid out here, yes.
Yeah.
Because the horror of existence,
Yeah.
pain, anxiety, knowing we're vulnerable, mortal, that's just part of the deal. It's inherent. So the material suggests that without meaning derived from a deep value system, without that sense of directed movement, well, nihilism and despair are almost inevitable.
So our actions are always framed as moving from point A, this undesirable present, towards a better point B in the future. And that's driven by our values, whether we state them or not.
Yeah, the present is seen as eternally lacking, and the future holds the promise of being eternally better. That's the engine for action.
But there's a challenging point here, too, isn't there, about what we want versus what we need.
Oh, absolutely. The source makes this tricky point that what you currently want might actually be blinding you, getting in the way of what you truly need.
And getting what you need might be hard.
Very hard, painful even. It might mean letting go of old habits, old ways of doing things, maybe even deeply held values that have become part of who you are.
Wow.
It's described almost like allowing parts of yourself or your life to die, so that something new can grow.
That's a profound thought. Growth requiring a kind of loss. Okay, shifting gears a bit, but staying with the source. There's this really concrete biological connection discussed, linking social standing to our internal state using lobsters. That really jumped out at me.
It's certainly a memorable point.
Yeah.
The source draws this parallel, arguing these dominance hierarchies are ancient, deeply rooted, affecting our actual neurochemistry.
So low status in lobsters and humans means lower serotonin.
That's the link presented, lower serotonin levels.
And the impact of that is pretty big.
Oh, yeah. Decreased confidence, a much higher stress response, feeling more pain, more anxiety, even physical illness, and potentially a shorter lifespan. It's significant.
And it connects this directly to how we hold ourselves, our posture.
Explicitly, yes.
Yeah.
The idea is that slumping, adopting that posture of the defeated lobster,
Yeah.
look, it doesn't just reflect low status. It actually signals it.
To others.
To others, yes, but crucially, back to your own brain. Reinforcing that low serotonin state. So your physical bearing and your psychological state are in this constant feedback loop.
Huh. It also touches on our evolutionary wiring, this hyperactive agency detector. What's that about?
Oh, right. That's fascinating, too. It's our built-in tendency to see intention, personality, agency everywhere, especially in other people.
So we're always trying to figure out who's doing what and why.
Pretty much. The source argues this is why social dynamics are so absolutely fundamental for us. We're evolved to track status, intention, relationships. It matters deeply.
Okay, so we're biological creatures tuned into social hierarchies, navigating this order chaos thing. What happens when we hit the suffering that's just part of life? The source seems to push back hard against just aiming for happiness.
It does, quite forcefully.
Right.
It brings up Alexander Solzhenitsyn's experience in the Soviet Gulag as a key example.
Right.
In that kind of extreme suffering, the idea of just pursuing happiness seemed, well, absurd. Solzhenitsyn's big realization, as presented here, was that meaning wasn't in comfort or pleasure. It was found in developing character, finding truth in the face of that immense suffering.
Which leads naturally to confronting something really difficult, our own capacity for evil, for malevolence.
Yes, the source argues we have to confront that potential within ourselves. It gives examples, like new soldiers shocked by what they find themselves capable of in combat.
Or people from really sheltered backgrounds being terrified by the malevolence they encounter because they haven't acknowledged it in themselves.
Exactly, because they haven't faced that shadow side within.
And it contrasts different ways people respond to suffering and this inner darkness. There's one path, like pure vengeance, destruction. It mentions Karl Panzram.
Yeah, whose hatred just expanded and expanded until it consumed everything. That's presented as one extreme response.
Versus another path, the path of self-reflection, striving to be better.
Right. Which the source sees in Solzhenitsyn asking himself in the Gulag, how did I contribute to this catastrophe? Or the example of an artist emerging from a terrible school experience, not seeking revenge, but focusing on rebuilding his own life, contributing to his tradition.
That line from Solzhenitsyn is incredibly powerful here. The line between good and evil passes right through every human heart.
It's central. And the source states it plainly. Suffering is real. And the deliberate, artful infliction of suffering just for its own sake, that's the essence of wrong.
So the good is the opposite.
The opposite. Whatever stops that from happening, whatever makes suffering less.
So how do we navigate this reality of suffering, our own potential darkness? The source points to a really critical tool, Truth, telling the truth, or at least not lying.
Yes. It used a clinical anecdote about working with a paranoid client. Trust wasn't built by, like, agreeing with the client's delusions.
Yep.
No, it was built by responding honestly, carefully, but honestly, even when it was hard for the client to hear. The client eventually came to trust the therapist's truthfulness, the therapist's connection to reality, not just their presence.
And authenticity is described in this light, too, as learning from mistakes, adjusting when things aren't working.
Exactly.
Huh.
Because the inauthentic person, the argument goes, keeps perceiving and acting based on falsehoods. Even when reality is constantly showing them they're wrong, they're building their life on lies.
And the source warns that lies are sneaky, not just words, but acted out.
Yes, very much so. And even small lies, seemingly trivial ones, are seen as connected to a conspiracy against reality. Large lies, systemic deceit, they truly spoil the world, according to this view.
So connecting back to order and chaos, speaking the truth about reality, articulating it, that helps manage it, reduces anxiety.
That's the idea. Identifying things with language simplifies them, makes them graspable. Leaving things vague, especially uncomfortable truths, that makes the world too complex, too frightening to navigate.
So the process outlined is something like, say what you mean, partly to figure out what you mean, then act it out, pay attention to the results, notice your errors, try to correct them.
That's the core loop presented. And the source argues this is precisely how you discover the meaning of your life, how you build a structure based on truth that can actually protect you from life's inherent tragedy.
Okay. Now, moving into relationships. The source gives some very direct advice here. Like, rule 3, make friends with people who want the best for you.
Right. And it contrasts this sharply with the easier path sometimes. Associating with people who are actually bad for you.
Why would anyone do that?
The book describes it as this kind of implicit, unspoken contract, aimed at failure, maybe even nihilism. Sacrificing the future for the present because it takes less effort right now. It's easier to hang out with people who don't challenge you, even if they drag you down.
There's also a warning about trying to rescue people, isn't there? Suggesting it might be about vanity, narcissism. It mentions Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground.
Yes, that's a sharp point. The idea that sometimes a person's misery isn't something they necessarily want fixed. It can be, consciously or unconsciously, a kind of weapon. Or even a revenge on being, as the source puts it. Trying to rescue someone like that might be more about your needs than theirs.
Wow. Okay. And within healthier relationships, the source really emphasizes listening, true listening.
Absolutely. It frames it as difficult, actually, because we're often so quick to evaluate, to judge, to formulate our own response while the other person is still talking.
Right.
It brings in Carl Rogers' ideas here. True listening takes courage, but it leads to much more honest, much more interesting conversations. It even suggests that practical exercise, rephrase what the other person just said, to their satisfaction before you give your own response.
That sounds hard.
It is, and it's explicitly contrasted with conversations that are really just, dominance games. People jockeying for position, trying to win, rather than genuinely interacting or trying to understand.
And there's this other interesting idea, outsourcing our sanity. What does that mean?
It's the idea that we rely on the reactions of others, social feedback, to keep our own complex selves functioning properly, to guide our behavior towards something better, towards an ideal.
So other people help keep us on track.
In a way, yes. And this is why, the source argues, a fundamental job of parents is to make their children socially acceptable, so they can actually get that crucial feedback from the community later on.
Okay. So conversations aimed at real understanding, they require respect. Meditating on what's said, not just strategizing.
That's the essence of it, which builds nicely into the section on parenting.
Right. It emphasizes the huge impact of daily, seemingly small problems, like fighting over bedtime every single night.
Yeah, it does the arithmetic, as it calls it. Adds up all those minutes, hours. Shows how these seemingly trivial, constant battles drain enormous amounts of time and energy. They aren't trivial in aggregate.
And it offers specific principles for discipline, like limit the rules.
Limit rules to the minimum necessary. And use the minimum necessary force, defined as whatever stops dangerous or truly unacceptable behavior fastest, within reason.
It uses vivid examples, doesn't it? Like a kid poking a fork in an electrical socket, or running into a parking lot.
Exactly. Situations demanding immediate, clear, decisive action to prevent harm. That's the context for minimum necessary force.
It also argues that parents ideally come in pairs for support and perspective.
It does make that argument, yes. acknowledging the immense challenges single parents face, but stating that from this perspective focused on consistent discipline and parental sanity. Having two parents offers built-in support, checks, and balances.
And crucially, parents need to understand their own capacity for harshness, resentment.
Yes, this is a really important point in the text, that resentment builds up almost inevitably when a child is allowed to dominate or behave terribly without effective limits. And that resentment can lead parents to punish subtly, maybe vengefully, without even fully realizing it.
So better to discipline effectively and clearly.
And then reward desired behavior. No grudge after victory, is the phrase used. Clear the air. The source gives an anecdote about positively reinforcing a child eating certain foods, setting clear limits, and contrasting that with just enabling bad behavior, which helps no one.
It presents this idea that kids, kind of like young chimps, actually test boundaries by provoking adults.
They push to see where the walls are, and finding those limits, even if it's frustrating for them in the moment, actually provides security. Knowing the rules makes the world feel safer, more predictable.
Which leads to a critique of over-sheltering kids, preventing them from facing difficulty or asserting themselves.
Yes. The argument is that this can make them not only, frankly, unlikable to others, but also profoundly unprepared for the real world. They haven't developed resilience or competence.
Okay. Now, the source also steps back and offers some broader, well, critiques of culture. And we should be clear, we're just presenting the arguments from the source here.
Absolutely. Impartially presenting what the text says. One claim presented is that certain academic disciplines are described as being forthrightly hostile towards men.
Okay. And what's the reasoning given in the source?
The material states these fields are argued to be dominated by postmodern and neo-Marxist ideas. Ideas that frame Western culture primarily as an oppressive structure, mainly created by white men, and that the focus often blurs the line between education and activism.
And does the source offer a counter-argument to that specific view?
It does. It suggests that other factors are maybe more significant explanations for historical differences in roles or treatment between men and women.
Such as?
Such as the sheer historical struggle against privation, just surviving, was incredibly hard. And also fundamental biological differences, like the burden of reproduction falling on women and average physical strength differences. It presents these as major factors, not just societal tyranny.
The source even cites examples of technologies, mainly developed by men, like anesthesia, sanitary products, birth control.
Yes, arguing these things significantly freed women, improved their lives dramatically. And this challenges, in the source's view, the idea that male activity historically has only created oppressive structures.
Okay. There's also a critique presented about the social constructionist view of gender.
Right. The source argues that pushing for strict equity of outcome between genders leads some to insist that any observed differences must be purely socially constructed.
And it sees inconsistencies there.
It points out what it considers internal inconsistencies. For example, saying gender is purely a social construct, while also accepting the idea of gender reassignment based on someone feeling trapped in the wrong body, which seems to imply an underlying biological reality to gender identity. That's the tension highlighted.
The material also asserts that trying to equalize all outcomes is basically impossible, and that defining equal work is really difficult.
This raises those practical challenges.
And finally, in this cultural critique section, it touches on challenges women might face finding partners, relating it back to dominance hierarchies.
It does. It notes the demographic shift, more women graduating university than men in many places, and combines that with the sociological observation that women often tend to prefer partners of equal or higher status. The source presents this as creating practical difficulties in the modern dating market, linking it back to those deep-seated hierarchy dynamics.
Okay. Bringing it back now to the individual journey, the source emphasizes that understanding complexity is just hard.
Right.
It uses a very sensitive example about determining if one was raped, pointing out the infinite layers of subjective experience, intention, interpretation involved, just illustrating how difficult pinning down complex realities can be.
And it reiterates that core idea. Voluntarily encountering reality, facing it, and articulating it, using language, using truth. That's how we shape ourselves in the world.
Which leads directly to one of the most well-known lines from this work. Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world.
Right. It's presented as the path taken by people who emerged from truly terrible suffering, like Solzhenitsyn again, or that artist example. Focus first on what's directly within your own control, your own life, your own character.
But developing your own path, your own truth.
Yeah.
That can have costs. Right. the source talks about conflict.
It does. It uses the example of rejecting a father's vision for your career. Following your own path might mean conflict, disagreement, maybe even breaking ties. It references the biblical line, I came not to send peace, but a sword.
Wow.
But the argument is that kind of conflict might be necessary for true authenticity, for building your own genuine structure. And only then can you maybe genuinely support others from a place of strength, not obligation or resentment.
So taking the risk of sacrificing your own, maybe limited personal will to pursue a higher truth or follow the process of becoming, that's framed as courage, faith in the process.
Yes, not as passive submission, but as an active, courageous engagement with reality and your own potential.
And resilience, then. It doesn't come from avoiding hard things.
No, the source argues it comes from confronting difficulty within yourself and out in the world, confronting it with, ideally, love, encouragement, and developed character. It highlights the horror of ruin that comes not just from tragedy, but also from deception, from malevolence.
And finally, there's this powerful contrast drawn between an anti-human spirit seeing humanity as just a plague on the earth and the absolutely remarkable potential and achievements of humans. It mentions amazing athletic feats, parkour, extreme sports, things that show incredible capability and striving against limits.
Yeah, showcasing the heights individuals can reach.
It also contrasts the danger of, quote, weak men, meaning men lacking character or competence with women's desire, as presented in the source, for partners who can actually contend with them, men who bring something strong and capable to the relationship.
It ties back into that idea of striving, competence, and hierarchy again.
So wrapping all this up, it's really fascinating, isn't it? How these seemingly disparate ideas, lobster biology, ancient myths, clinical psychology, cultural critique, parenting advice,
It's a lot.
they all get woven together, trying to create this coherent framework.
Yeah, what's really striking is that integration from the biological basis of status to needing values to avoid despair, the reality of suffering, the power of truth, how to choose relationships, raise kids, even critiques of society. And this constant call for individual responsibility, it all circles back.
To navigate that fundamental tension, right, between order and chaos in your own life.
Exactly. It's presented as a comprehensive guide, drawing from all these different areas of human experience and knowledge for doing just that.
It really does keep coming back to that core idea, finding meaning by standing on that boundary line, grounded in truth, accepting responsibility for yourself, what's in your control, and being willing to face difficulty inside yourself and out in the world.
Which, this raises an important question, maybe for you, the listener, to think about after hearing all this. Given these insights about confronting suffering, the power of truth, the potential that comes from individual striving, how might consciously focusing on ordering what is within your direct control your own house, so to speak, how might that fundamentally change how you perceive and interact with the wider world, the chaos outside?
That's a great question to ponder. And the source leaves us with one final thought to carry forward, too. A question, really, about the collective impact of all this individual effort. It prompts us to consider, who knows what existence might be like if we all decided to strive for the best?